Hey everybody, Jonathan Doyle with you once again. Welcome to my humble studio with my fancy microphone and my headphones. If you could see me now, you'd say to yourself, that guy, he's one serious podcaster. Love my stuff. People keep coming up to me at live events going, you really love your microphones, don't you? Isn't it weird? As humans, we all well, you have one too. Yeah, you may not have a microphone thing, but if you're listening to me right now, you've got something similar. We all do. It's part of the great rich tapestry of human life, the things we're interested in. We've got this local music store that has all this stuff. If I could set up a camp bed down there, I don't think they'd ever get rid of me. So friends, I just think you're worth it. I just think it's worth bringing you great content with high quality microphones. I know you're listening going, really, Jonathan, that's it? That's what you have for us today? You want to tell us how excited you are about audio quality? Well, look, put it this way. Audio quality is the kind of thing that you miss when it's gone. I know you're got to stop being ungrateful. You're just used to high quality audio on this podcast. If I took it away, you'd be emailing me straight away. You'd be sending me messages going, Jonathan, I love your stuff. It's the best, but the audio quality, you got to work on that. All right, I digress. I just spoke for a minute and 24 seconds about sound quality. Let's see if I can rescue this. Let's see if I can save this podcast today. Friends, housekeeping, make sure you've subscribed. Hit that subscribe button. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google. Oh, there are so many podcast apps now. There is a veritable plethora, a cornucopia of podcast apps out there. So wherever you're listening, I would love it if you could hit that subscribe button and then go and check out the show notes. Wherever you're listening, there's a whole bunch of show notes here. I added some new ones. There's a link straight across to YouTube. And there is a link to Karen's MasterClass. If she runs this phenomenal MasterClass for women around the world. It's I think she brings together in each group maybe 5 or 6 women, and they just do the most amazing stuff at looking at some of the challenging issues that we all face, business, personal, family. So go check out Karen's MasterClass. All right, friends, today I'm excited about today's topic. It's if you didn't hear yesterday, this next couple of weeks is a whole series of episodes from you guys, from each one of you who responded to my email a couple of weeks back about what are the issues that you face, what are the challenges going on in your life. So we're all going to get an insight into the things that we all deal with, and today is a great question. And comes from a listener in the United Kingdom who says, one of my constant struggles is taking offense too easily, which leads to greater stress and poor quality relationships within close-knit circles. I know it comes from some deep insecurity from my past as a child and having an unloving father and overbearing mother. I'm working on it, and I'm conscious I don't want my children to adopt negative behaviors and attitudes because of it. Welcome aboard, friends, to the human journey. I can relate to this a bit. I think some of you can. It's if you wanted to be born in a time in human history where you could be easily offended, welcome aboard. There seems to be offense waiting around every street corner. With each mouse click on social media, you can find new and creative ways to be offended. This is a media political conglomerate that thrives on offense, perceived offense, the idea that there are good people and bad people, and that the bad people are doing offensive things and the good people are fighting the good fight against it. That's a little reductionist, right? The world is a complex place. I'm not denying for a second the reality of objective evil. But can we agree together that if any of us struggle with being offended easily, we are born at a moment where it is so possible to be offended. So we can be offended by whatever's going on in the news cycle. We can be offended by people at work. We can be offended by people in our own families. We can be offended by the state of the world. So first thing is to recognize that it is a relative swamp of potential offense out there. So we'd all probably want to get pretty good at working out what we're going to do about this, because I think what the listener here is alluding to is offense is a hijacking emotion. You know, we have some emotions like impatience and, you know, we have a mild annoyance, things that just, you know, niggle away at us. But there are some things that can just hijack us and basically mug us in a second, and offense is one of them. Because the minute we're in the pattern of offence, then you will notice a rapid interior monologue. The interior monologue will be something like, sometimes global statements, well, this is what we'd expect, they always do this, this is what they always do, it's happening everywhere, so that we go to those global statements. So it's a hijacking emotion. It really can take us over quickly and do a great deal of damage. So what do we do? I got a couple of initial thoughts, then I want to go a little bit deeper. Just on this topic of the ubiquity of offence, the sheer volume of it floating around us, I'm always coming back to Stephen Covey's great work in The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, where he talked about the difference between the circle of interest and the circle of concern and sort of the circle of control. There's the things that we're interested in life, there's the things that we're sort of concerned about in life, and then there's things that we can control in life. One of the problems with offence is that often we're getting offended these days by things that we can do very little about, especially on the geopolitical sort of scale. The problems that beset the world and the way that they are framed by the media and political conglomerate, as I like to call it, is we can easily become offended and obsessed with things that we are never going to be able to do really anything about. So I just want to put that out there first to say we would want to be diligent and sober and aware of geopolitical events and their potential impact, but we also need to realize that spending enormous amounts of emotional, psychological, and intellectual energy on things out there in the world that we can't do a great deal about is not particularly good for our health and not particularly good for our relationships. I'm not saying that we should ignore and not have an interest in these things. I'm just saying that I think the most important things that we do on a daily basis are in the circle of control, the things that we can actually do something about: family, our work, our spirituality, our physical health, our sense of community and connection with others. These are the things that we can do. And sometimes being hijacked by offence and things out there beyond us is not a particularly great use of the beautiful resources and reserves that we carry. Now, what else did I write about this? I want to give you some practical things about what we can actually do when we notice offence taking place. And maybe that's the first step, right, is to notice, to go, my friend here in this message has talked about, I know it comes, this is their quote, I know it comes from some deep insecurity from my past as a child and having an unloving father and an overbearing mother. Now, let me talk about that for a second. So as somebody who has come from a very challenging background, and without going into detail on this podcast, of somebody who has dealt with a lot of trauma and difficulty and has had to do an enormous amount of work on myself to get where I am today. And many of you can relate to that story too, because you've done something similar. But my opinion, and that is all this is, and I would love to hear what you think. You can email me or you can jump on YouTube, post something in the comments, is what I found with a lot of modern therapy is that what I tended to end up with was a narrative, right? So I got, this is just my experience, I got a really good understanding of why I might feel the way I do, but I didn't ever get a great deal of breakthrough or help, I felt, in terms of, well, okay, now what do you do? And I'm saying that because if you look at this comment here, this person saying, I know it comes from deep insecurity from my past as a child. This is a beautiful comment and a relevant one, but what I want to say is, yes, a lot of the things that hijack us will be coming from forces deep in our subconscious and our childhood experiences, right? So it's kind of one of the few things I guess I agree with Freud on, is that the unconscious is a thing, and Jung as well, it's a thing, and we are often impacted and directed and driven by forces that come from our distant past and distant experiences. So without minimizing any of that, knowing it doesn't necessarily change anything. By which I mean, once you know that, oh look, I feel this way, I take offense because of this, my answer to that is I often say to people 3 words, and these 3 words are this: and now what? And now what? So once you understand that you might be responding because of X, what do we do with that? Well, I think the first thing to do is to begin to develop a bit of groundedness to, as the offence narrative plays out. Now, some of you are listening going, oh, Jonathan, this is not really for me. I don't really get offended that much. It'll be something else for you. Something else will trigger you. And what I'm saying for all of us is that we need to get really good at noticing, oh, I'm running that pattern. Someone said this, someone cut me off in traffic, someone offended me, someone did this. Now I'm going to run this pattern. So we've got to get really good at going, hang on, I'm running the pattern. Capture yourself in the act of running the pattern and just notice that you're doing it. That's the first thing. I got to be honest, I remember doing some personality indicators, and in terms of neurotic belief systems, my score was higher than the average. I mean, I'm just being honest with you, friends. So I noticed that I can quite easily get myself caught up in a dialogue sometimes, that's less balanced than what some of you would make. So I've had to get better at noticing my capacity to respond to stimuli in a particular way because of where I came from and the experiences that I've had. So all I'm saying to all of you and to my friend here is, once you notice you're being mugged, once you notice that you're being neurally hijacked by an emotion or an emotional response, just notice it, right? Just ground yourself at that point. Go, oh, okay, I'm being offended. Now, I might be offended because I was rejected by my parents and I didn't feel I was loved unconditionally, and when people overlook me, it triggers that experience. Maybe all completely true. Just begin by noticing it. The next practical thing I say to people is this about you or about them? So when someone's causing offense, just go, hang on, am I oversensitive to this? What would another person looking at this from the outside think? And you might even want to ask somebody, like if you've been offended, if there was somebody else who was present, you could ask them. You could literally later on say, hey, look, what did you think about this? Am I overreacting here? Try and get some feedback to try and validate or I guess test your hypothesis about what's actually happening, because sometimes we're so close to things that we can't do that part really well. So we want to go, is this about me and how I'm responding, or is it about them? Maybe they're just obnoxious. Maybe they're really awful people. Maybe they just had a bad day. Sometimes people have really bad days and they cause offense because they're exhausted, or their baby cried all night, or, they got a flat tire. Who knows? So we want to get those parts right. We want to go, and I guess related to this is it a one-off, right? Or is this a pattern? If you're in a work context or a family context, is this person triggering you regularly? Are other people triggering you in a similar environment? Like, you want to try to delineate what belongs to the other people, what belongs to the circumstance, what else might be going on. I spoke last week to a large group, and I remember talking about another story from Stephen Covey's book where this is a true story. He was on a train one day in New York, and he's on this train, and there's this man there, and this man's got 6 children. They're all pretty young. And these kids are just going feral. They're like, swinging off the bars and yelling and screaming, and they're unrestrained. And this man's just sitting there staring blankly into the distance. And Stephen Covey finds himself getting really angry. He's like getting really angry, going, So his narrative starts, right? So Stephen Covey's getting mugged, getting neurally hijacked by his belief system, which was what? Well, his belief system was people should control their children. People should behave a certain way in the environment. People shouldn't do this. Parents should be better. And finally, he'd had enough, and he just turned to this man and said, "Excuse me, sir." He said, "Please, could you control your children? This is not okay." And the man kind of looked up at him, and he was sort of looking really glazed, and he said, "Look, I'm so sorry." He said, "We've just come from a hospital in the city. Their mother died this morning," right? It's a true story. And Covey was just like, it was just the most confronting thing, because he had ascribed all this meaning to the circumstance, which was just completely incorrect. Now, I don't want to say that's every circumstance, because sometimes people are just being obnoxious. Sometimes people are being offensive. So we want to find out what's going on. Like, we want to get those parts right. So is it about you? Is it about them? What else did I write here? When you are dealing with offense, here's a useful question. Ask yourself this: what will nursing this create in my life? What will nursing this create in my life? Here's what I think it will probably create. It will create sleeplessness. It will create bitterness. It will create resentment. It will create, you'll overreact at other things. So offense is one of the things we want to deal with pretty quickly, because if we hold on to it, it's going to create other outcomes in our lives. Somebody cuts you off in traffic, yeah, you're offended, but you move on pretty quick. You get on with your day, right? Eventually, we hope. But if there's somebody close to you that is causing offense, or you're experiencing offense in relationship to them, ask yourself, if I don't address this, if this stays the same, what is this going to create in my life? All right, next thing. What would I rather be experiencing? This is a great reframing question. Is like, when you find yourself really offended, just go, hang on. Yeah, because when you're offended, you're totally attuned to it. You're feeling it. You're aware of it. It's present. It's in your reality. It's causing this big interior monologue to kick off. But I often like to say, ask yourself a question. What would I rather be experiencing right now? What would I rather be experiencing? Now, this isn't to deny the reality of what's happening. You're not going, well, I'm just going to ignore it and I'm going to just be, it's like Pollyanna. I'm just going to look at rainbows and unicorns. It's not that. It's like basically going, okay, this is not what I want for my life. I'm not going to take the bait. I'm not going down the rabbit hole. What would I rather be experiencing? Okay, now, what you'd rather be experiencing will depend on the particular relationship. If it's someone you care about, then there's going to be a reason why you'll want to come to this next step in a moment, which is doing something about it. But if it's somebody who you just like, whatever, you're not a big part of my life, I don't know who you are, or I don't see you very often, I'm just going to move on. Some things we can let go, right? Some things we can let go because we want to experience life as often as possible in a more abundant, peaceful, pleasant kind of way. What else did I write here? The last thing, you guys should be so proud of me today. Not only are you getting high quality microphones, you're getting note taking as well. The last thing here is to say, is the relationship important enough that I need to speak up? We want to do some triage here. We want to say to ourselves, look, this offense is a problem because I care about this person. I see them regularly. They're part of my circle. I need to get this addressed. And then what you need is the virtue of courage. You need to care about yourself enough, and you need to care about the relationship enough, and you need to care about them enough to, in the appropriate way, consult the offense. Just to go, we need to talk, we need to have a conversation, and sometimes this can be really hard. It can be really confronting, really scary because, but these honest conversations can really move relationships to a whole new level. And you start by saying things like, look, last Tuesday at dinner, when you said this, I felt really offended. I don't know if that was your intention. I'm wondering if we can talk about it because I care about you. And if you're listening going, no one talks like that. No, you can. You actually can talk like that. You can say, look, man, I really care about you and I felt really upset and I felt it was very disrespectful and we want to do this. Well, I want to talk to you about it, right? So you have to weigh up, is the relationship valuable enough? So, of people that I'm close to and people that are important in my life, then these are investments worth making. And I guess the other thing behind this question is, I don't know how to express this. We got to hold all this pretty lightly. I don't expect government, organizations, hierarchies to make me happy. I really don't. I mean, I have very, very strong libertarian leanings, right? I kind of feel that one of the ways to get offended in life at the moment is to expect institutions, government to be operating at this, angelic standard and to treat me well all the time. I just know it's not going to happen. So one of the ways to beat offense is going to sound crazy if I say it this way, is to have pretty low expectations, right, of certain groups. And I don't want to be defeatist here. I'm just saying, see things for what they are. See the moment in history for where we are. And what's that old saying? Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me, right? If you get offended by a bureaucracy or an institution over and over and over and over again because you think it's going to change, is probably, a little bit of realism here, a little bit of, this is a beautiful world, but there's brokenness in it, and no one's going to make me completely happy, and definitely no institution or hierarchy or bureaucracy is going to meet all my needs. So we want to have that kind of healthy, this is a motivational podcast. I don't know how else to say it, but a healthy realism, not a healthy pessimism, I guess, about whether or not certain groups and people can make us happy. And look, the last thing, which I meant to say at the start, is there is a book written by the American pastor John Bevere, and if any of you find yourself that offense is problematic, his book is really interesting. It's called The Bait of Satan. The Bait of Satan. And I haven't read it, but I know John Bevere does a lot of good stuff, and it's one of those books that I didn't read it because I got the premise immediately. And the premise of the book, and I do recommend getting it if offense is a challenge for you, is if you were the devil, what is one of the best strategies you could come up with to create chaos in human relationships? And it's offense. Because offense can often be so silent. We just harbor it, we just feed on it, we just keep going with it. So this offense just keeps rolling. And so that's why it's the bait of Satan. It's like you take the bait and it just keeps growing, right? And just chaos and bad stuff keeps flowing from it. So maybe check out that book. And look, I know some of you could be listening thinking, hang on, Jonathan, this is all good, this is practical, I get it. But, what about if we've been really hurt? What if people have done genuinely bad things to us? I have had several listeners reach out, which we will discuss in the upcoming episodes, around just that topic about being genuinely hurt and being offended. Look, I think that's a process to work through. I think forgiveness is ultimately a superpower. One of the greatest ways to set yourself free in life and to free others is to arrive at a place of forgiveness, and it can be done. Karen was in Sydney a couple of days ago, and she caught up with the lady who, my overseas listeners may not be aware of this, but there was a family who their kids were just out walking to the local store to get an ice cream, and they were hit by a driver on drugs. And this family lost 3 little children from their own family immediately, and this is the Abdullah family, and their witness of forgiveness is just extraordinary. But you know what? Their journey of forgiveness has also included acknowledging the truth of the loss and the darkness and the evil and the suffering of it. So what I'm getting at is, on this topic of offense and suffering and wrongdoing, we can get to forgiveness. It doesn't mean it's an easy journey, but it's a journey that tends to bring about extraordinary beauty and empowerment and encouragement. So do what you can reasonably do, but a life lived in offense is a life half lived. We are going to get offended. We're going to rub up against each other. We're going to rub up against people. My thesis of life is that I don't think that there's a lot of genuinely evil people in the world. I definitely think there are some. And I take Scott Peck, the psychotherapist's definition of evil, as a good one, which is what he called the people of the lie. He used to say that genuine evil is what he calls the people of the lie, which is people who are doing things that are genuinely harmful, and they're doing them on purpose, but they have no sense that it's wrong. Those people, whether that's sociopathy or psychopathy, they're relatively rare. For the rest of us are just kind of human, and we get tired, and we have baggage, and we have hurts from the past, and we rub up against each other, and we're going to cause offense. It's going to happen. So, unless one of my listeners is a 1-day or 2-day-old baby, live long enough, friends, you're going to get offended, and you're going to get offended probably tomorrow and maybe next week. And if it isn't a real person, it'll be something on the news. So my heart for you is that you develop this graciousness, that you develop this ability to assume the best about people, that you develop the ability to be assertive and strong when you need to be, and to have challenging conversations when you need to be. But my prayer for you is that you do not let this bait of Satan run your life, because that's what he wants, and that's not what I want for you, and that's not what you want for yourself. So there's a lot in that today. Summary: be grounded, recognize when you're being hijacked by your belief system around offense, or anything else for that matter. Ask yourself good questions about what's actually happening, and then ask yourself about the value of the relationship. Is it worth having difficult, honest conversations about to move you both forward? All right, friends, God bless you. Please make sure you're subscribed. Share this with some friends. Send this to everybody you know. You'll probably offend a couple of people, and it'll give them a chance to practice. All right, that's brilliant. Gosh, I should start my own show. All right, God bless you, everybody. Check out those links. You can book me to speak. I'm back on the circuit. You can get private coaching with me. Go check out Karen's masterclass in the show notes. But that's it for today. Tomorrow, let me just check the schedule. What are we talking about tomorrow? Tomorrow we're going to talk about judgment. Judgment of ourselves, judgment of others. That's on tomorrow's show. So I look forward to talking to you then. God bless everybody. My name's Jonathan Doyle. This has been the Daily Podcast, and you and I are going to talk again tomorrow.